Enterprise architecture, or EA, is the recognized strategic framework for modern digital transformation. It operates by strictly aligning an organization's raw IT infrastructure with its actual business processes. When executed correctly at the national level, EA ensures interoperability across vast government agencies, integrating processes, data, and infrastructure to eliminate silos and improve transparency. Malaysia introduced the MyGov EA blueprint to achieve exactly this kind of standardized synchronization. Yet, when this national blueprint is pushed down to local government authorities, known as PBTs, adoption crashes. After 6 years of implementation, 20% of federal ministries have adopted the architecture, but across the broader spectrum of public sector agencies, that number plummets to a mere 0.7%. This catastrophic drop-off stems from a specific procedural error. Federal-oriented frameworks like TOGAF or FIAF are designed for highly centralized agencies with massive budgets. Those exact same models are being applied directly to local municipalities without any contextual modification. Local councils operate on an entirely different structural logic. They face multi-local governance friction, heavy dependency on state resources, and a highly fragmented internal structure where individual departments demand operational autonomy to handle direct community services like waste management and urban planning. Generic models fail here because they assume a clean organizational slate. To bridge this local digital adoption gap, we have to engineer a bespoke, empirically grounded conceptual model built across 10 specific dimensions of municipal constraint. We start with the reality of a constrained local municipal council. Before any internal IT decisions occur, adoption behavior is shaped by the institutional environment dimension, the macro-level external forces pressing down on the council. The heaviest of these is coercive pressure. These are the direct, top-down federal and state mandates, often carrying the implicit or explicit threat of withheld funding for noncompliance. Next is normative pressure, which exerts lateral influence through professional associations and industry standards that dictate best practices. Finally, there is mimetic pressure. Municipal councils frequently observe and imitate the successful digital implementations of their peer councils to reduce their own risk. Operating directly inside these institutional forces is the policy and regulatory dimension, creating a secondary shell of constraint. This creates severe multi-layered tension. A local council is forced to align its highly specific community ordinances with state government directives, while simultaneously attempting to comply with federal MyGov EA policies. The council is squeezed by complex external institutional and regulatory pressures before a single server is bought or process mapped. Generic EA models completely ignore this external compression. Moving past the external environment, we hit the internal organizational structure and autonomy dimension. Enterprise architecture requires rigid centralization. Local authorities are defined by fragmentation. A district council's waste management systems operate entirely separate from its urban planning databases, generating incompatible data streams and siloed workflows. The required countermeasure is the governance dimension. Councils must establish formal EA steering committees to enforce compliance and demand semantic interoperability across these heavily fortified silos. But establishing that governance matrix requires capital, bringing us to the financial resources dimension. Unlike federal agencies, local budgets are consumed almost entirely by mandated community operations. Discretionary funding is incredibly tight, leaving almost zero capital for multi-year IT overhauls. Even if funds are identified, allocating them depends entirely on the leadership and authority dimension. Local government operates on a complex dual-track leadership structure. Administrative IT directors can initiate an enterprise architecture plan, but sustained implementation requires political sponsorship. Mayors and elected council members must actively secure and defend the funding across highly volatile electoral cycles. Internal departmental fragmentation, operational budget starvation, and dual-track political volatility guarantee that generic federal blueprints shatter upon contact with local municipalities. All of this brings us to the actual hardware, mapped in the technological capability dimension. However, raw ICT infrastructure maturity is rarely the deciding factor. Adoption is frequently throttled by the perceived complexity of EA methodologies. If the system looks too difficult to maintain, the operational advantages are ignored. This is compounded by the organizational readiness dimension. Many local councils suffer from a severe lack of standardized, documented business processes, making architectural modeling nearly impossible to start, which reveals the final, most critical piece of the model, the human capital and knowledge dimension. We are looking at a severe local talent crisis. Municipalities simply cannot compete with private sector compensation or the prestige of federal agencies to attract and retain certified enterprise architects. If a local government manages to navigate the political mandates, fund the technology, and establish steering committees, a fatal lack of specialized human capital will stall the implementation indefinitely. With all 10 dimensions mapped, we can group them into the technology, organization, and environment framework to track the actual sequence of adoption. The direct predictors are clear. Environmental pressures, rigorous governance, and expected benefits lead directly to adoption intention. Coercive state mandates combined with clear operational benefits will successfully force a PBT leadership team to state their intention to adopt enterprise architecture. But having the intention to adopt does not automatically equal implementation success. There is a massive operational gap. This gap is bridged by mediating variables. These internal organizational capabilities act as a strict, unforgiving filter between intention and reality. These specific mediators dictate success: the frequency of dedicated training, the specific communication skills of the architects on staff, and the robust use of knowledge-sharing repositories. Without actively subsidizing these specific human capital mediators, strong federal mandates will only ever generate intention. That bottleneck is exactly where the 0.7% adoption stagnation occurs. Overcoming friction at the local level requires precision engineering, not broad strokes. For policymakers and IT strategists, the data is definitive. Handing down a standardized national blueprint is not digital transformation. Actual transformation requires engineering specific local government structures, balancing departmental autonomy against interoperability, and aggressively funding the human capital required to translate a national vision into local reality.